Parker will be back in the back. Thank you for coming, and Mr. Parker will open with his opening statement.
Can you hear without the microphone?
No.
I was hoping not to have to use the microphone. I want to thank you for being here, and I also want to thank the school for setting this up. I think it's a good thing. I hope today that you can gather a little knowledge about our experience and you know what we do as the job of the sheriff here in Howard County. I am a lifetime resident of Howard County. I was born and raised in Knott, Texas. I graduated from Sands High School in 1982. I began my law enforcement career with the Big Spring Police Department. And in 1988, I graduated from Howard College, and then I'm also a 2000 graduate of the Law Enforcement Management Institute of Texas. I have over 30 years of law enforcement experience. 19 of those years are in the management or upper administration of law enforcement. I currently have almost 5,000 hours of TCOL training. Hang on a bit, I got a little off my... The Sheriff's Office today plays a very active role in the communities. We're very actively involved in school safety. We're also very ingrained with mental health. Mental health is a big issue in basically every county across the state of Texas. The sheriff also plays a very active role in the community and community relationships and listens to the needs of the community. A sheriff's office to me is a lot more than someone that just goes out and arrests, writes tickets, and things like that. Currently, I serve on the board of directors for MHMR. I also serve on the governing board of the Big Spring State Hospital, and I'm also on the board of directors for the Permian Basin Law Enforcement Academy. But anyway, that pretty much wraps up my opening, and again, I thank you for being here.
Hello, folks. My name is Tad Ellis, and I've got a prepared statement. I'm sorry. My name is Tad Ellis, and I've got a prepared statement that I'd like to read from my opening statement. So the shorthand of it is in 2008, I retired from being a full-time police officer. I moved to Howard County about 7 years ago to be closer to my family. Since relocating to Howard County, I've been hearing how frustrated people in the county are with law enforcement. Last year, I began toying with the idea to run for sheriff. As I began talking to people in the community, I seemed to garner more and more support. The platform that I want to convey to folks is that I'm a good alternative to the status quo. All that being said, I was disappointed to learn earlier this week that there were discussions within the local law enforcement community that someone is trying to dig up dirt on me. Someone is attempting to make contact with my ex-wife, who I've been divorced from for 25 years. Unfortunately, I have to use valuable speech time to address this issue that was settled and disposed of 25 years ago. I want to start by saying that public records often do not tell the entire story. The circumstances and details and behind-the-scenes conversations are generally not part of these records. In 1994, 25 years ago, following the birth of my son, my wife at the time developed severe mental illness. As a result of this, she became very volatile and violent towards everyone, but especially towards me. On 2 separate occasions in the latter part of '94, she had to be hospitalized under emergency conditions due to her mental health issues. Needless to say, during that time frame, there was a regular law enforcement presence at our home. On one occasion, the sheriff that I worked for at the time responded to one of the calls, pulled me aside, and explained that the presence was bringing discredit upon the department. He sympathized with me, but told me that if I wanted to keep my job, that I needed to get the situation under control or distance myself from it. I took his advice and moved out the next day. A few weeks passed, and my wife invited me back to the house under the pretense of discussing the future. I foolishly went, and once again she became violent, which resulted in the police being called. Police arrived at the house without asking any questions, and with no discussion, the officers charged me with a Class C misdemeanor, which was subsequently dismissed by the judge. Just a few short weeks later, I was offered employment as a police officer by 2 police departments following multiple extensive background checks in which this incident was addressed and in no way hindered my employment. I would later also be appointed to the United States Marshals Fugitive Task Force after following their rigorous background checks. I'd like to think we can both agree, Mr. Parker, that unfounded accusations from years ago shouldn't disqualify a person from being the sheriff of Howard County. So now that that's out there, let's sit back and civilly discuss our ideas, beliefs, and law enforcement philosophies in a dignified manner. Thank you.
All right, once again, these questions I just handed out, they will go over them, and I'll read one to you right now. What role do you feel that law enforcement sheriff's office should play in school safety in Howard County? Mr. Ellis?
So I believe that law enforcement should play a big role. If it were up to me, I would like to see a school resource officer and officer assigned to every campus in the county. And not just for enforcement purposes. I think we need officers on the school, especially in this day and time, to develop relationships with today's youth. Police are getting a bad rap, and all that's starting in the schools and in the families and with young children. Police need to be in the schools to develop relationships with those people and see that we're there on their side. I also believe it's important in today's society that we have SROs on campus for the obvious. School security, active shooters, things like that. In my past, I actually administered an SRO program in one of the departments I worked for. I wrote the grant, we got the program, and I administered that. It was very successful, and to this day, they still have school resource officers in place at that agency. I just can't speak enough on the importance of it. I know there's budgetary issues and things like that, but I think if law enforcement leaders and school leaders could come together, we could actively budget getting officers in each school on each campus. I think that would be very important. Thank you.
I think that the law enforcement and sheriff's office should play a major role in school security and safety. In 2013, I think we got with Coahoma and Forsan, and we did not have a school resource officer program, and so both schools came to an agreement, and we began a school resource officer program in both schools. Today, because of financial issues, the schools chose to share a school resource officer, and that's been going on for a couple years. And but that school resource officer, I'm very passionate about it because I was a school resource officer right here at Big Spring Independent School District for 5 years. So I understand the need to have a school resource officer. But also, too, not just a school resource officer for that. We are deeply involved with each school and teaching the Guardian program. The police department, the sheriff's office, and DPS are all training with the schools. We have the Guardian programs in place now. And each school district comes together. They take license to carry teachers. We specifically train those teachers to handle active shooters. So I think that's a very, very important role that we play, and we stay with that training also. We continually train with the schools, and if they have questions or problems, we deal with those problems. Thank you.
All right, next question. When seeking solutions, what is the process or method that you use? Mr. Parker?
I have surrounded myself with people probably better capable of doing my job than I am. I have made sure that I have people in place. I have probably one of the best jail administrators in the state of Texas. I have probably one of the best communications supervisors in the state of Texas, and I also believe I have one of the best chief deputies and patrol lieutenants in the state of Texas. I use them to help with the decision making, because I feel that if one person's trying to make that decision, then I think that often comes up short. So I feel like it's a team effort, because a lot of times when we make decisions or we try to find solutions, we make decisions that affect everybody in the department. So I think it's best that, depending on the situation, if it's a specific department problem, then I think we need to go to that department head, and that person and I work out the solution. If it's something that's going to affect the entire agency, then I get the entire staff together, and we together come up with a solution that works. Thank you.
And I think to a degree we both agree on that. it's important to surround yourself with competent folks whose opinion you value and can look at. Also, too, for the last 12 years, I've worked in the corporate world as a police consultant, basically. And as part of our training, they send us, as crazy as this sounds, we went to a seminar called Lean Six Sigma. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that. I'm actually a black belt in Lean Six Sigma, and it's a program that teaches you to solve problems, come up with solutions, things like that. There's a formula that they call the DMAIC, and DMAIC stands for Define, Measure, Analyze, Improve, and Control. And I thought it was a bunch of mumbo jumbo when I first took the course and started in it. But as you start putting these principles into play and into practice, it really does help you make efficient decisions, problem-solving skills, and things like that. So as part of my training and part of my experience, I actually have this yellow belt or black belt in the Lean Six Sigma that's helped me in my decision-making processes. So, thank you.
Once again, this is being live streamed on KBS and the high school Facebook page, so you can go ahead and watch it again if need to be. What equipment do you believe that the Howard County Sheriff's Department needs but does not have, and why is it needed? Mr. Ellis?
That's a very good question, thank you. I believe that the most important piece of equipment that the modern police officer, patrol officer can have is the body-worn camera. These things hold everyone accountable. The police officer, the people they're dealing with, everybody tends to act differently when they know that the interaction is being recorded. Also, too, we hear complaints about prosecutions, people not being prosecuted by the district attorney's office. If all that is on a recorded body cam, every interaction, that can't but help prosecution and help the prosecutor make his case. It holds down on citizen complaints. You know, you might have a little upfront cost to get the body cameras and get the data storage, but one false complaint could cost the county millions in frivolous lawsuits and things like that. So I think in today's technology, it's important that officers be equipped with the body-worn camera, and I believe that's the most important piece of equipment we could have.
Probably the biggest piece of equipment that we need right now is we have a radio system that was probably built in the 1950s. It's an old analog system, and we have very steadily decreased in our radio coverage, and currently right now we are in an agreement with the city and to build a new radio, or we're having a new radio system installed and built for the entire county. And with that radio system, we have also included each school district. They have a trunk in that, as you would say. And that is also going to link us with each school district, so if in case of an emergency event, we will have radio contact with each school district. I think that is a missing component that we don't have now because we have limited contact with both school districts because of radio coverage and even cell coverage in some of the outlying school districts. So that is something that we're working on and we have been working on, and hopefully within this upcoming year we'll have that.
What are the pros and cons to the Joint Law Enforcement Center? Mr. Parker, this is yours.
Okay. The pros and cons of the Joint Law Enforcement Center. In about 2010, Chief Lonnie Smith and I sat down and we started talking about combining services and combining law enforcement. And by talking about combining services, people are, I think, getting confused. While the sheriff is the highest ranking law enforcement official in the county, I don't have control over how the police department works. But what we did is we combined services. At one time we had 2 jails, we had 2 dispatch centers. We were duplicating services like you couldn't believe. It was costing you a lot of money. Now we have 1 jail, we have 1 communication center, we have 1 group of evidence techs that come out for us. We have 1 group of mental health deputies that cover the entire county. And so that was the intent of combining the 2. The cons to it, I really don't know that I can think of a lot of those. I mean, I guess one of them is the employees talk, and there is pay differences between the 2 departments, so that's something that we're combating. The county's actually a little lower paid for those of you listening. And so, you know, we are working toward getting that where we have some, you know, equality in pay, but that's the biggest con that I can think of.
So, the pros of a joint law enforcement center are as the sheriff described. You've got, you do away with duplication of services. I think they could do a better job of actually doing away with some services that are duplicated. But another pro is that you're able to share information. Crime doesn't stop at the county line or at the city limits. These criminals are going out and they're committing crimes out in the county and in the city. So it's important that they're all together, they can talk, they can have those meetings and discuss those crimes and different things like that. So you've got that, shared resources under one roof. Like he says, the centralized dispatch, shared jail, shared evidence. Those are all good things, but I think we can do a lot more to do away with some of those duplicated services. Some of the cons of a joint law enforcement center are just tactical disadvantages. If a fire breaks out or a tornado comes through and wipes out that building, you've completely crippled law enforcement for the county. Terrorist attack. After the Oklahoma City bombing, all of the federal law enforcement agencies all over the country used to be housed in federal courthouses. And now everywhere you go, those federal law enforcement agencies are housed separate of the courthouses. So that's really the only con I can think of, is it's just a tactical advantage. And you think it would never happen, but it could always happen. So that's kind of my answer on that. Thank you.
What is your law enforcement background or experience? Mr. Ellis, back to you.
Well, that's an easy one. People that know me know that I like talking about myself, so I can give you my law enforcement background and experience. So I started my law enforcement career in 1990 with the Potter County Sheriff's Office. I worked there, Randall County Sheriff's Office for a while, and eventually got hired on at the Slayton Police Department. Once at the Slayton Police Department, I progressed through the ranks fairly quickly. Spent some time as a task force officer for the United States Marshals Fugitive Task Force, which was a lot of fun. Most of my experience has been in supervision, police supervision and management, but I was also a heck of an investigator back in my day. When I investigated, I kind of specialized in search and seizure. I can write search warrants that have been upheld by the Court of Appeals. I investigated violence against women and children, put a lot of people in jail, had a lot of successful prosecutions and different things like that. I retired from the police department in 2008. At that time, I was hired by a Fortune 500 company as a public safety consultant. So that's my job now, is I actually travel around the country, train police administrators and police departments on different things ranging from mandatory federal and state reporting, racial profile reporting, report writing, pretty much anything that a police officer does clerically or reporting. I've been doing that for 12 years. One thing that I really learned about that job, or that I think is unique to me,
10 seconds.
Is that I'm a different police department every week. I see different leadership styles. I know what works. I know what doesn't. So I'll bring the best of those worlds to the Howard County Sheriff's Office.
Like I said, I started my career in 1985 with the Big Spring Police Department. I'd served time in patrol. I was a school resource officer. I also worked in investigations. I was promoted to sergeant, and I was put into school resource. I was a patrol sergeant for a little while, and then I promoted to lieutenant. And that was my first step into law enforcement management or administration. We're given a division. I had the patrol division first, and we're given the entire operations of that division. That includes dealing with personnel and budget and everything else. So I spent 7 years doing that. I've been the sheriff starting on my 12th year now. So all in all, I have, like I say, I have 30 years, a little over 30 years of law enforcement experience, and 19 of that in law enforcement management. I knew at an early point in my career that I wanted to do more than just work the streets or a street level officer, and I began trying to advance my career. I went to Howard College, and I have a degree from Howard College, and then in 2000 I was able to graduate the Law Enforcement Management Institute, and that was after I took an administrative position with the police department. So I have always tried to further my career and get a little bit better at what I do and learn new things. Currently, through TCO, I have 4,985 hours, I believe, of training, and that won't stop. So, thank you.
Mr. Parker, this one's for you again. What do you see looming out there that will need the attention of Howard County's next sheriff? That is what is not even obvious to the public, but is headed our way.
That one was a hard one to answer, but I think some of the things that we're dealing with right now is the unknown in the oil field. Right now, we don't even know what our population is right now, and it's really kind of taxing us as to being able to, to provide services that we need to in the correct way. Something else that's looming out here that you may or may not know about, but the state of Texas also hands down a lot of unfunded mandates every year. Our medical budget in the jail has doubled this year, and it's because of unfunded mandates. More and more, the mental health problems are being handed off to the counties to deal with. Currently today in your county jails, we house more persons with serious mental illness than does the state hospital system. So we have addressed a lot of those needs, and we've created the mental health program inside our jail. We have 2 counselors in there now that we're feverishly trying to address. We have a working relationship with West Texas Centers. They were able to get a grant that covers the entire program. And another component of it that's something that's not looming, I think it's well known, but the drug and alcohol problem. Probably 80 to 90% of the people in our jail have a drug and alcohol problem. We've now added another component into that mental health side where we can offer drug and alcohol treatment for some of these offenders. So we're trying to address the problem at the backside instead of just only the front side. Thank you.
What I see looming out there for the Howard County Sheriff's Office and for all agencies in the state of Texas is the growing instance of sex trafficking. I travel all over the state. I train in different agencies every couple of weeks, and we're seeing it everywhere. Sex trafficking, it's the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the United States. It's more profitable than drugs. It's more profitable than most criminal enterprises, and the reason being because they have a commodity that they resell over and over and over. We have seen some signs of sex trafficking going on in Howard County. I'm aware of some different things that have happened. Talked to some folks at DPS. It's something that's coming, and it's something that's going to get worse. It's too profitable for these people to come in and, like I say, sell the commodity over and over and over again. So I think that's one of the things we're going to have looming in Howard County, and we're going to have to do something about it and step up the enforcement. People can't keep turning a blind eye to things that are happening right under their nose. So that's something that I think we'll have to work on in the coming years and see if we can eradicate this problem. Thank you.
When making decisions, what is your guiding principle? Mr. Ellis.
Thank you. That's a good question and an easy answer. When making decisions, first of all, I always fall back to my Christian faith. Think about what's right, what's wrong. Also try to look at the big picture. If my decision is going to affect a lot of people, I want to step back and make sure I understand exactly what that decision is going to do and how it's going to affect these people. As we mentioned earlier, also if it's a big decision, I may consult with people around me, make sure that I'm on the right track and we're thinking the right way. But overall, I think I just follow my conscience, follow my Christian values, and use that in making decisions.
I use a few different things in decision making. First of all, is it legal? We at times get asked to do things that aren't legal, and that's an easy decision right there. We won't do it. Is it ethical? We have a lot of ability, or we have ability to do things that may be right, but is it the right thing to do? So we kind of measure and monitor. How's it going to affect you, and how's it going to affect us, and how's it going to affect the community? Yes, we can do it, but is it the right thing to do? So we use that as a determinant. And also, I always try to weigh in any decision we make, how's it going to benefit the community overall? Because the community is who we serve, and I want to do what's right for the community. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Parker, what unique skill set do you bring to the table?
I think a lot of it goes back to, I was born and raised here. I know the people of this community. I have good relationships, good rapport with a lot of the different leaders of this community. My 30 years of law enforcement experience. And also I've been told, and I guess I think I have pretty good people skills. So I have the ability to approach and strike up a conversation with people. That way we can get to a working solution. Thank you.
So as I mentioned earlier, my current job has me going to a different police department every week. Being in that position, I'm able to see what leadership styles, what philosophies are successful, what aren't. I would plan to bring the best of those things back to Howard County. I also have the unique skill set to talk to people. I'm personable, I'm approachable, I can do that. And I've been in law enforcement and public safety for 30 years. One thing that I think is unique about me, and I hear it as a con all the time, but I don't see it. Yeah, I'm not from here. I've only lived here 7 years. But the benefit of that is I don't know most of you. I don't know anybody. I don't know who the players are. I don't know who the big money people are. I don't care. If you come to me and you break the law, equal justice under the law, I'll make sure you're prosecuted and go to jail. The only person I really know here is my family, my mother-in-law. Those of you know me know that I wouldn't hesitate a minute to put my mother-in-law in jail. So but that's kind of the unique skill set I bring to Howard County. Thank you.
Last question, and we'll start with you, Mr. Ellis. What do you believe is the most important issue facing the position for which you are running, and what do you intend to do about it?
Thank you. To me, I believe the most important issue facing the general public in Howard County as a whole is the narcotics trade. I can link every crime that is committed in Howard County or the city of Big Spring back to narcotics, be it a theft, be it a criminal mischief, be it a sex crime. Something has to be done about the narcotic trade in Howard County. There's too many people getting away with it. It's not like people don't know what's going on. They see it, nothing's being done. There is no dedicated unit or group of people within the sheriff's office that enforce narcotic laws. And bottom line, and we can prove it statistically, everything, all the crime in Howard County links back to those drugs, those drug dealers, and those drug users. So to me, that's what I believe the biggest issue is, and if elected, that's what I plan to do. Have dedicated people, knowledgeable people to enforce the narcotic drug laws in the county. Thank you.
I think some of the biggest issues facing us right now are the amount of population that we have in this town that's brought in by the oil boom. It not only stresses the infrastructure of the communities, water system, roads, etc. It stresses the infrastructure of law enforcement. When I started in 2009, we had 12 deputies. We're up to 24 now. We added 2 positions this year, and we're trying to meet the needs. We're answering over 500 calls, or about 500 calls a month now. When I started in 2009, we were averaging a little over 100. So our volume has increased. In 2009, the jail was open. The study on that, I believe, that they did in 2007, that was supposed to last us for the next 30 years. We have reached capacity many, many times, and we're still fighting that every day to control that. But those are some of the things that I think that are pressing on the office right now. Thank you.
This question is for Mr. Parker from Mr. Ellis. Mr. Parker will have 90 seconds to respond to the question before he is disrupted. Mr. Parker, what, if any, plans do you have to combat the ever-growing narcotics industry taking root within the country?
That's a hard one to fight because we have been fighting the war on drugs, I guess, since the 80s. And we have narcotics enforcement because that's one of the shared things that we do. We actually have 2 people in the academy right now, and the chief and I are talks about actually when one of those gets out, adding another position, narcotics, to start addressing that end of it. But also too, what we're doing to combat the drug problem is, because until you stop the demand, you're never going to stop the sale of it. So that's why we have started the program in the jail on a grant to start helping some of these people recover from addiction. And I'm very passionate about that, and we have started slowly. We've involved the DA's office, the county attorney's office, adult probation, juvenile probation, and we have started slow with it, and we have seen some great success so far. We have a few that have gone through it, and they have never not gone back, and they haven't violated yet. So hopefully that's a program that we're going to grow, and we're going to try to grow it rapidly within the next couple of years. Thank you.
This question is for Mr. Ellis from Mr. Parker. Mr. Ellis will have 90 seconds to respond to the question before he is disrupted. Mr. Ellis, you stated that you were the chief of police at a city in Oklahoma. What city were you chief for how long, and how many officers did you supervise?
Okay, I was chief of police in a little town called Tupelo, Oklahoma. I think at its height we had 7 officers. We had several full-time and some reserves also. There was a lot of grant-funded positions that I obtained while I was the chief of police there. I think I was chief of police there for a little over a year and a half before the local sheriff there offered me a job as the undersheriff. I think that pretty much answers it. Anybody have any questions on that? I'll be glad to take those up at the end.
This question is for Mr. Parker from Mr. Ellis. Mr. Parker will have 90 seconds to respond before he is disrupted. Mr. Parker, what do you see as the most important duty responsibility of the county sheriff?
It's kind of hard. The sheriff is actually the manager of the department. We have, we provide a service to the community, but we also provide a service to the people that work for us. So the sheriff's office handles a $6 million budget, and I think that's where, that's probably one of my more important jobs right now, is to manage that budget, because it's there's not a lot of playroom in it. Probably 75% of that budget is for personnel. So as far as the serving the needs and things like that, we have the jail that's kind of volatile at times as to what expenses we have. But also too, it's to maintain a good relationship with everybody that we work with, the schools and the college and the city and the county, and it's a juggling act. Thank you.
This question is from Mr. Ellis from Mr. Parker. Mr. Ellis, the sheriff is not only a law enforcement officer, but a manager. The sheriff must be able to manage people, a budget, and the overall operations of the department. Mr. Ellis, please explain both your previous education and management training background. You have 90 seconds.
Okay. My background is, like I said before, I was a full-time law enforcement officer for about 18 years before retiring and coming to work in the private sector as a public safety consultant. During that time, I quickly promoted to management. When I left the Slayton Police Department, I was the number 3 man on the totem pole. I was involved in budgeting decisions, different things like that. I've also, as we stated earlier, established I was the chief of police in Oklahoma. I was in charge of budgeting, although not on a $6 million scale, but we did do some budgeting things. And then later on, when I was under sheriff at the sheriff's office in Oklahoma, I was involved again in budgeting on a very shoestring budget. Oklahoma is probably one of the poorest states in the country. At that place, I think we ran 18 deputies, something like that, I don't remember, on about half the budget that we're talking about here. So I do have some training and experience in budget. I've taken some law enforcement management courses over the years. That's about my training. I graduated from the Panhandle Regional Law Enforcement Academy back in 1991, I believe, 92. I don't have as many training hours, continuing education hours as Sheriff Parker, but I've been retired since 2008. I think I have around 2,000 hours. I don't know, I'd have to pull it up. But I stopped taking those continuing education classes in 2008. Had no intention of ever returning to law enforcement until I actually got here and saw what was going on. So I have since renewed my license. It's changed from a retired status back to an active status.
10 seconds.
And, I'm prepared to do what we need to do for the citizens of Howard County as far as budgeting and coming under and different things like that. So, thank you.
Mr. Parker, this is your question from Mr. Ellis. Mr. Parker, what do you believe has been your greatest accomplishment during your tenure as sheriff of Howard County? You have 90 seconds.
There's a lot of them. I think probably the best thing, one of the greatest accomplishments that I have is whenever Chief Lonnie Smith and I just sat down and we both saw the need, we put our personal feelings aside, and we started working toward a combined law enforcement facility and quit duplicating services because, when you work divided, you don't work as strong, but when you work as one, then you're a lot better because it does give us the ability to, our patrols brief together, our investigators work together, we're chasing the same people. So the Joint Law Enforcement Center not only saved you a lot of money, I feel like it has the potential to give you a better law enforcement overall because we have a very good working relationship at the lower levels and also at the management levels. But we have a very good working relationship with the men and women on the street and the men and women out here investigating the crimes. And we don't duplicate those services anymore. We have one way of doing everything and it seems to be working out. Thank you.
This is the final question. This question is from Mr. Ellis from Mr. Parker. Mr. Ellis will have 90 seconds to respond to the question before he is disrupted. Mr. Ellis, you claim to have 30 years of law enforcement experience. However, according to an open records request through the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, you only have 18 years of experience. How are you claiming time that the state licensing agency does not recognize as law enforcement time?
I think if you'll look at any literature, any claims I've made about my law enforcement experience, I've told you that I have 30 years in the law enforcement and public safety domain. And that is true. I worked 18 years as a cop on the street, as a police supervisor and administrator of management. I retired in 2008. I was hired as a public safety consultant. My job now, current job now, has me in a different police department every week, every couple of weeks, consulting with them on current state law, policies, procedures, state mandated reporting. So yeah, as far as the state of Texas is concerned, I was a police officer for 18 years. But for the past 12 years, I've been working as a public safety consultant, actually training police officers and police administrators. Thank you.
And now for Mr. Parker to begin his closing statement.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
I want to thank you again for being here. I've enjoyed this. It's been stressful. I worry about things, but like I say, just to kind of summarize everything, this is my home, and it's always been my home, and it will always be my home. My wife and I have raised 4 kids here. We now have 4 grandkids being raised here. I care about what happens in this community. And as if you'll look through my career as sheriff, we've always tried to do something. We continually are working to do something to better improve quality of life here for everybody here in Howard County. In 2012, we opened the Joint Law Enforcement Center, and that was something that saved each and every one of you, a little bit of tax money. And a few years down the road, we created the school resource officer position to make our schools a better place to be. A few years after that, we started working on a mental health deputy program. That program is actually funded by grants, and that goes all throughout the community. That program was designed because we have a lot of people with mental illness in this community. A lot of them are homeless, and the only place to take them was jail, and for committing minor crimes. And what those guys are doing now is they're diverting about 300 to 400 of those a year away from jail and getting them into services and making them productive citizens of our community again. And some of the needs with the mental health issues in the jail, we have created a new program that's also getting accolades across the state of Texas. Texas Jail Commission is actually referring other counties to us to help us guide them on how to build a program similar to ours, so it's working. And the latest component that we've added is, I realize there is a drug problem here, and the only way you're going to fix that problem is to reduce the demand. So a lot of people never get the opportunity because they don't have the money or the financing or the financial backing to go to drug and alcohol treatment. Some of those programs are $25,000, $30,000. So we're now giving these people the opportunity to get drug and alcohol treatment and hopefully
10 seconds.
handle their addiction and stop that problem. But anyway, I've enjoyed being the sheriff of Howard County. I'd like to continue to be the sheriff of Howard County, and I ask that you continue to support us. Thank you.
Well, I also am a resident of Howard County. I own property, I pay taxes, I own a home, I have kids that attend school in Forest End. So I have a vested interest in things that go on in the county as well. A lot of the programs that Sheriff Parker mentions are admirable, they're well-run. Things that are working, things that are positive, we have no plans to change. I think the biggest frustration for me and for other folks in the county is the lack of response, the lack of attention to crimes that are happening. Victims are routinely turned away, reports are not being taken. Officers show up, they're rude, condescending, and just refuse to do their job. So that's my stance, is as I want to come in there, I want to be there for the victim. I want to see that crimes are reported, prosecuted, and arrested. Once we get them in the system, yes, we can put them on Sheriff Parker's programs for drug treatment and things like that. But before they're arrested, before cases are filed, there's not much that we can do about these people. So as Sheriff of Howard County, that would be my number one priority, is enforcement of the law, specifically the drug trafficking that we mentioned and everything that goes along with that. Like I said before, every crime we can link back to drugs in this county. We've got to do something with the drug problem. And it starts with law enforcement actually getting out, being proactive, and making arrests. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming out. Mr. Parker will be in the back, and Mr. Ellis will be right over here in this back corner for one-on-one questions. Thank you.